Science Week 8, Planets. Our corner of the universe. Last week, we learned about the universe with all its stars and galaxies. This week, we'll stay closer to home. This issue is about Earth's neighborhood, the solar system. When we say the word solar, we're talking about anything related to our sun. And you remember what a system is, a group of objects that work or act together. Still important to know. So our solar system is the group of objects that work or act together with the sun. The sun is an average-sized star in the middle of its life. There are billions of other stars, and many are much larger or brighter. But for us here on Earth, our star, the sun, is the most important object in the sky. That's because without the sun, there would be no life. Earth revolves around the sun, and our cycles of rotation and revolution make up our days, seasons, and years. So the sun is really a big deal. Plus, it's a big star. Of course, Earth isn't the only planet that revolves around the sun. Our solar system has 8 planets, and each one travels around the sun. The 4 planets closest to the sun are called inner planets, and you'll remember they are also called terrestrial planets. These planets are rocky, small, and relatively close together. There are 4 outer planets. These are made mostly of gas, otherwise known as the gas giants. These 4 outer planets are much larger and more far apart than the 4 inner planets. Between the inner and outer planets, there's an asteroid belt that is also revolving around the sun. Farthest out in our solar system, we find the dwarf planet Pluto. Scientists used to think of it as the 9th planet in our solar system. But then in 2006, it was a rough time, you guys. I was a freshman in high school, and I lost a little bit of faith in science because my whole school career I had learned Pluto is a planet, and then all of a sudden, in 2006, scientists decided to redefine what a planet is. So Pluto and several other objects are now called dwarf planets, and I'm okay with it now, but it was rough. What holds these planets, asteroids, and dwarf planets in orbit around the sun? The sun is much more massive than anything else, so it has a strong force of gravity. This gravitational pull is keeping each planet in orbit around the sun. If it weren't for the sun's gravity, the planets would fly off into space, and that would be crazy. Much of the solar system is still a mystery. How are the other planets different from Earth? Could life exist on any of them? Keep reading for answers. And you've got a beautiful picture on the bottom. Fun fact, you guys, which was going to be like one of my real life math mistakes of sorts in math class, also relates to science. So you can get just about anything on Amazon Prime, right? Like they kind of have anything from A to Z on Amazon. Okay, get this. They don't exactly have everything. So someone called, this is a true story, by the way. Someone called Amazon and wanted an exact replica of the Earth, and this person said they couldn't, that's not a thing they could mail to their front door, and I'm not really sure they understood why they couldn't get an exact size replica of the Earth rather than a miniature one like the globe. So, you can't even get an exact replica size of your county or, state. So I don't know. I hope that person, learned and got a good science lesson out of it, because, oh goodness, it's a little concerning. But onward. Planets of our solar system. Let's start by looking at the solar system like a map. If we travel from the sun, we'll find the 4 inner planets. Then we'll travel through the asteroid belt and we'll visit the 4 outer planets. What exactly is a planet? Well, check it out. A planet is any object that is in orbit around the sun, is large and nearly round, and has cleared its orbit of all other objects. The inner planets. The first 4 planets are all relatively small and close together. They are also terrestrial, which means they are hard and rocky. So if you hear people talking about the terrain of a valley, it would be flat. The terrain of mountains, obviously, jagged and mountainous. Mercury. The first terrestrial planet is Mercury, closest to the sun. Its temperatures can reach 800 degrees Fahrenheit, but because the atmosphere on Mercury is so thin, there's nothing to trap the heat. At night, the temperature on Mercury drops to negative 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Mercury is covered with craters, like our moon, and because it's the closest to the sun, it travels around the sun in only 88 days. There's no sign of life on Mercury, and with such temperature extremes, it's easy to see why. Venus. The brightest planet in the night sky is Venus, the second planet from the sun. It's about the same size as Earth and is also terrestrial, but the similarities end there. Venus has a thick atmosphere of poisonous gas. Venus is often referred to as our sister planet because it's similar in size to Earth. This atmosphere traps heat around the planet, so Venus is so hot it could melt lead. This thick gas atmosphere reflects sunlight, which makes Venus shine so brightly. Venus rotates much more slowly on its axis than Earth does. It takes 243 days for Venus to rotate once. That means a day on Venus is 243 Earth days long. That is crazy. Venus is the only planet that rotates in the opposite direction from all the other planets. Earth, also known as the third rock from the sun, because it's the third planet from the sun and it has a rocky atmosphere, known as land, right? Or a rocky terrain, not atmosphere, known as the land or the lithosphere. Earth. We live on the third planet from the sun. Earth is unlike any other planets because it's the only one that has life that we know of. Earth has requirements for life that other planets don't have. It has an atmosphere that supplies all the gases necessary for living things. The atmosphere keeps temperatures even so the planet doesn't overheat or freeze. And of course, Earth has water, which is the most important requirement for living things. Mars. The fourth planet from the sun is named after the Roman god of war. Early telescopes showed formations on Mars that looked like canals. Because of this, people used to imagine that there might once have been life on Mars. They even called these imaginary Mars creatures Martians. So the shin, not your leg portion, but T-I-A-N. When you see that shin after a word, it means mini. So Martian would be like mini creatures on Mars. So fun fact about language. We now know that Mars does not have Martians, but it does have water trapped on ice at the poles. It has a very thin atmosphere too, along with volcanoes, dust storms, and 2 moons. With temperatures of negative 81 degrees Fahrenheit, it's way too cold on Mars for life. The asteroid belt. The asteroid belt is a group of thousands of asteroids revolving around the sun. An asteroid is a huge chunk of rock. Some of them are as big as a car, and some are miles across. These rock chunks are too small and unevenly shaped to be planets. Ceres, a dwarf planet, is large and round and traveling around the sun in the asteroid belt. Some scientists believe the asteroid belt is all that remains of an exploded planet, but we may never know for sure. The outer planets. Jupiter. Jupiter is the most massive planet in our solar system and is 5th from the sun. It's not terrestrial, but is composed of gases held together under intense pressure. Jupiter is so large that more than 1,000 Earths could fit inside it. It has huge swirling storms on its surface. There's an atmosphere of mostly hydrogen and helium. So those two gases make up what? Stars. Yep, but Jupiter is a planet. So the atmosphere is mostly hydrogen, helium, and electric currents run below Jupiter's surface. Jupiter has 49 moons and takes 12 years to travel around the sun. Oh, my phone is on ring. Oopsie. I'm going to take care of that so we don't get interrupted. Yikes. Saturn. The 6th planet is Saturn, another gas giant. Saturn is the 2nd largest planet in the solar system. Like Jupiter, Saturn is mostly made of hydrogen and helium. Those two gases together should make you think of a star. Saturn is best known for its beautiful rings. The rings are made up of dust, rocks, and ice chunks. Saturn has 60 moons, and we may discover more. A space probe named Cassini-Huygens has been circling Saturn since 2004, sending back detailed, beautiful pictures of this mysterious planet. Okay, we know this one. Uranus. Uranus is the 7th planet from the sun and is sometimes called the sideways planet because it rotates on its side. Uranus cannot be seen without a telescope, so it wasn't discovered until 1781. It is the 3rd largest planet, much larger than Earth, but not nearly as large as Jupiter or Saturn. Uranus has 11 rings and 27 moons. It's very cold because it's far away from the sun. Like Jupiter and Saturn, or you guys know it's also pronounced Uranus, but either way, it's awkward, right? Uranus is composed of helium and hydrogen. It also has methane gas and traces of water. The methane gas makes Uranus appear to be blue-green. I really thought they also included the fact that it rotates on its side, but oh my gosh, they did. I just read that and forgot that I read it. Okay, well, that's embarrassing. On we go. Neptune. Neptune is the last gas giant. It's just a little smaller than Uranus, and as with Uranus, you need a telescope to see Neptune. Neptune is 2.8 billion miles away from the sun. It has 6 rings and 13 moons. Its largest moon, Triton, orbits Neptune in the opposite direction that Neptune spins. Neptune's atmosphere is very thick and, like Uranus, made up of helium, hydrogen, and methane gas, but Neptune glows with a far brighter, bluer color than Uranus. Because of this different color, scientists know there's another gas in Neptune's atmosphere, but so far they don't know what that gas is. So thinking about my funny planet blooper there that I read and didn't realize, I know I've told you, but for real, case in point, sometimes I read things and I have to reread them. So it is not, yeah, that's funny. Just giggle at yourself and reread stuff because it's a helpful skill. Science, then and now, dwarf planets, 4 and counting. Let me back up to the planets again. I've tried to drill this into your brains. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Repeat, repeat, repeat. You can also think my very eager mother just served us noodles, or whatever silly acronym thing you want to make up to help you. Go for it. Okay. Dwarf planets, 4 and counting. For many years, we counted Pluto as a planet and had 9 planets in our solar system. But in 2006, astronomers from all over the world met to decide the official definition of a planet. They realized that with more powerful telescopes and space probes, they would be discovering more objects in space. Some would be larger than Pluto. They needed to decide the rules about what objects would be called planets. So these worldwide astronomers decided on 3 requirements. To be classified as a planet, an object must: 1. Be in orbit around the sun and not orbiting anything else. In other words, it cannot be a moon of another planet. 2. Be squished into a nearly round shape. 3. Be clear of all other objects in its orbit. In other words, it can't be circling with a lot of other objects in the same orbit. You guys, fun fact too about language, a lot is 2 words. A space lot. I know I've written that on some of your journals and stuff. And also, fun fact, I didn't learn that till I was in 8th grade, and we had a substitute teacher that really wanted to make sure we learned that, and I was like, what? So it's one of those silly common mistakes that you see done incorrectly so much that you're not really sure which one's right. So now you know, a lot. This is a lot of good language learning, isn't it? Pluto meets the first 2 requirements, but not the third. Pluto is orbiting Earth in the Kuiper Belt, a region of orbiting ice chunks and debris, called Kuiper Belt objects, or KBOs. Scientists only discovered the Kuiper Belt about 10 years ago. Although Pluto is larger than other chunks in the Kuiper Belt, these 2 objects are still in its orbit. So Pluto is now called a dwarf planet, and we're gonna have to be okay with that. There are 3 other dwarf planets in our system. Ceres orbits in the asteroid belt, and Eris is located in the Kuiper Belt with Pluto. Scientists have recently found another dwarf planet, Makemake, in the Kuiper Belt too. I think that might be Hawaiian, but I'm not positive. It's an awesome word by any means, Makemake. Astronomers have decided on a special name to call the dwarf planets in the Kuiper Belt, Plutoids. So yay for Pluto. This artist's impression shows how the surface of Pluto might look according to one of the 2 models that a team of astronomers has developed. At the distance of Pluto, the sun appears about 1,000 times fainter than on Earth. That's on account of because it's so far away. This week's question: will humans ever land on a planet? So far, the only space place where humans have landed is on Earth's moon. That was in 1969. Fun trivia fact. When we think of landing on another planet, the first problem is temperature. Plus, it takes a really long time to get there, you guys. Oof, duh. Mercury and Venus are much too hot, and Mars is much too cold. Another problem is distance, especially for the outer planets. It'd be difficult to design a spacecraft that could hold enough fuel to travel that far. A solution to this problem is to send robots to land on planet surfaces. NASA has landed robotic equipment on Mars called the Mars Rover and Mars Pathfinder, which traveled the surface, collected rocks, and took readings and photographs. NASA plans to send robotic space probes to Jupiter and Saturn as well. It looks like we'll be relying on computers and robots to land on the planets, at least for now. Math connection. Long distance. How long would it take to get to other planets? That's actually a very complicated question because every planet orbits the sun at a different rate. So their distance from Earth is constantly changing. Check it out. Let's look at Venus, the closest planet to Earth. When Earth and Venus are on opposite sides of the sun, they're very far from each other, of course. But when they're on the same side of the sun, they're much closer, but still very far. So let's try to figure out how long it would take when Earth is as close as it can be to Venus. Assume you could travel through space in your family's car at about 60 miles an hour. so miles per hour, that's unit rate, it would take 49 years to travel to Venus and about 66 years to travel to Mars. Now that's a long car ride, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to spend that much of my life in a car, even if it is going to a cool place. Good heavens, that's too long to be in a car. Oof. Okay. Connections. Cosmic storms threaten planes. Picture yourself flying on an airplane from New York to Hong Kong. Picture the route you're taking. Did you imagine yourself flying right over the North Pole, the shortest distance between the two cities and between many other destinations? It's right over the North or the South Pole. Flying over the poles can be cool, that is, unless there's a storm, cosmic storm. Cosmic storms are caused when an activity on the sun affects our planet. The sun naturally has flares that send large amounts of electromagnetic radiation towards the Earth. That radiation isn't usually a problem because the Earth directs the radiation toward the poles. That's what gives us those awesome northern lights. Here's where the problem starts. The sun's weather is on the 11-year cycle. It goes from bad to good to bad again. It's starting to get bad again right now. 11 years ago, the last time it was bad, there were only about a dozen flights that passed over the poles. Now, with more people traveling, nearly 7,000 flights pass over the poles each year. The cosmic storm radiation, when it hits a plane, can disrupt communications and GPS, which make it tough to know where you're going. And it also exposes passengers to enough radiation to equal 12 chest x-rays. What's the solution? There aren't always cosmic storms, so planes are usually perfectly safe to fly over the poles. Organizations such as the Space Weather Prediction Center are working on predicting weather on the sun. As we get better at that, planning flights should be much easier. If you guys want to look up and do some sort of awesome solar system thing, you sure can. There's an example right here in your mini lab. I've also done, in college, we once did to keep it all proportional but make it smaller and not life size. Looking at really how far the solar system is in proportion to fitting in a classroom. We took toilet paper, which maybe you don't want to use that. Maybe you want to use regular paper because of our crazy life situation that we're in. And we used marker and drew the sun and then Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and etc. Just to get an idea of how it really looks. So you may do that if it helps you learn. Here is your crossword. Catch you next time.